Hi, everyone in NC Poll and CGA land. This is Dawn Vaughan, your intrepid politics reporter at the News and Observer. You'll be hearing from me more often on our Under the Dome episodes, as I'll be taking on the lead hosting role in the podcast. So I'll talk to you soon.
Are you stuck staring at your W-2? Are tax refund worries holding you back? You probably have FOMO, the fear of messing up. The fix? Using TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They find every credit and deduction to help you get every refund dollar you deserve, or your money back. It's time to overcome your fear of messing up and get your taxes done right. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
This is Under the Dome. On today's episode, we're taking a look at Vice President Kamala Harris's latest visit to North Carolina, this time in Durham.
For the News and Observer and the NC Insider, I'm Dawn Vaughan, your host for this episode of Under the Dome for Monday, September 6, 2022. Happy Labor Day, everybody. Shout out to all the workers out there. Hope if you're working today, you get time and a half. So today I'm here with my colleague, Avi Bajpai. And our big news that we're talking about this week is something that just happened and will likely happen again. It was a visit from Vice President Kamala Harris, who came to North Carolina in Durham to visit a senior center, also a big fundraiser. And she's been here before. She's been in North Carolina before. So, Avi, who do you think she was targeting with her speech and her visit here?
It's great to join you, Dawn. So to set the stage with Vice President Harris's visit yesterday, pretty clearly the sort of objective of her trip yesterday and her decision to come back to North Carolina, which is obviously a very important state politically. They really wanted to sell basically the administration's latest political victory, which is the Inflation Reduction Act, which is this very large sweeping spending bill that was just passed a couple of weeks ago, covers climate change, covers tax issues, healthcare costs. And that's basically what Vice President Harris was here in town yesterday talking about. She visited a senior care center in downtown Durham. She was talking with seniors and with advocates for healthcare reform and expanding access to healthcare, basically talking to them about all the different provisions in this legislation that will try to bring down the cost of healthcare, bring down the cost of prescription drugs, basically allow things like allow Medicare to negotiate the prices of prescription drugs, and also set a cap for the cost of insulin, which has been a very big issue affecting lots of people, obviously.
Just for Medicare, though, right? The insulin cap just for Medicare?
Yes. So obviously a very interesting visit coming back to Durham. She was here most recently in March. So it's her second visit to the Bull City this year. And, I think what I was saying before, North Carolina is a key state. There's a very big pickup opportunity for Democrats. They have a very, very the slimmest majority possible in the U.S. Senate. And another seat would go a long way to the next 2 years of governance, basically, of lawmaking in Washington. Very interesting to see her come back to Durham. So, Dawn, you've seen her in Durham before. We've reported on her previous visits. I wanted to ask you, what exactly do you think is a reason for coming back? Why is Durham important here?
Well, one side note on what I wasn't in the field yesterday covering her. It was you and Lars Dolder, our colleague, and Lars went to the Center for Senior Life in Durham. Longtime listeners know that I covered Durham for more than a decade. And I remember when that senior center opened downtown, one of the best assignments, most fun assignments I had was a seniors dance. And it's not exactly what you would think. There was this woman who had a sparkly cane that she held over her head while she danced to the wobble. And I just thought, this is somebody I want to be when I'm 80 years old, because she was really full of life, really. So that's a little bit about that center downtown. So I could see why Harris would want to meet some of those Durham older Americans, older residents. So anyway, that's a variety of pack of places that she's been to Durham. She's spoken to a lot of places. Durham is about racially half and half, African American and white, with about 15% Latino population. And so turning out Black voters has always been significant for Democrats. As maybe people know or don't know, Black voter turnout was key for President Obama winning initially, and motivating voters. Motivating voters really is what a lot of elections are about, especially in a purple state where there's the dividing line. So she's coming for one reason, to motivate Black voters to turn out for Sherry Beasley, who would be the first Black woman U.S. Senator from North Carolina, which is a huge deal. Of course, the vice president was once a senator, and she first came to Durham, publicly anyway, when she was running in the presidential primary, and I had covered her then. And so she's made the rounds to a lot of different places. But it seems like the big reason that she was coming here was fundraising and money. And it was a private fundraiser that Lars didn't know where it was until he was actually there with the pool. So it was promoted in that way of, for the big donors, and she was the draw for a lot of big money people. The other factor of having an event in Durham or Raleigh or Chapel Hill around here is the media market, which of course includes us, the News and Observer, but also all the television stations. And you're going to get more attention when you come to a major metro area from more outlets, which is also what they're trying to do is get more attention to their visit. So touch a little bit on money, and a little bit more about this. And I kind of want to know your take on how much does money really play into whether or not somebody wins. Do you think it's a mix of ground game and money, one more than the other? Depends on the election. What do you think the different factors are?
I think it's really interesting. You mentioned two of the sort of tactics, or two of the key components: fundraising, spending money on advertising, but also the ground game, going around knocking on doors. It's actually interesting. Yesterday, several Republican officials, the chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party, and a couple of Republican lawmakers had sort of a press call, sort of to counter the vice president's visit. And one of the things that they were sort of emphasizing and mentioning, trying to just make this point crystal clear, is their success with the ground game. They mentioned already surpassing their target of knocking on 1 million doors, and they want to do that. They want to replicate that between now and November.
So I can talk as far as the ground game goes. That's true. Republicans have been much better at that, especially during the pandemic, and Democrats acknowledged that after 2020. Of course, President Biden won, but if we're looking at the state level and the seats in the legislature, which is a big deal this year, especially because of the Supreme Court ruling on abortion, and that states have control over abortion laws. And so control of the legislature is, obviously depends on, or the outcome of abortion legislation is who controls the legislature. And Republicans have very good ground game in the past. They think they still do. The Democrats have said that they're going to have a better ground game. We'll find out what that actually looks like. But some people don't want you knocking on their door and talking to them. Maybe they want to just give you money. Democrats are pretty good at raising money. And again, I guess that's why Kamala Harris came here, was to help drive that. So there's one other thing I want to touch on before we take a break. Avi, where does the filibuster come into play with all of this?
So the filibuster is centrally important, I would say. Democrats have said throughout the party, the progressive wing has sort of been leading the charge on this, but sort of centrist Democrats have come around on this as well. People like President Biden himself have come around on this. Basically, the idea of filibuster reform, either implementing carve-outs. So basically, the filibuster is this Senate rule that says that a minority of senators can basically block any legislation unless there's a 3/5 supermajority to sort of proceed to a vote on it. So in common mathematical terms, that basically means you need 60 votes to go ahead to a vote on any particular piece of legislation. That it gets a little sort of trickier into the weeds, but that doesn't deal with financial issues, I think is the easiest way to say it: spending and revenue. And this has really hampered key parts of the Democratic agenda: legislation on voting rights, legislation on climate change, and other really sort of big ticket items that they wanted to pass. They while they have control of Congress and the White House. And this is sort of one of the key points that Democrats are running on this election. This is sort of going to be what voters will decide. Do they want to do away with parts of the filibuster, either some parts of it or completely? And Kamala Harris was here yesterday, basically telling donors in Durham, in the state, that Democrats want to go ahead and make changes to the filibuster, either partially or completely, to pass the legislation that they identify as priorities. And they actually see North Carolina as one of the key states here. They right now have about 50 seats. They have 48. There's 48 Democratic senators. There's 2 independent senators who caucus with them. But there is some sort of public or pretty vocal resistance to this idea. So you had the vice president yesterday basically identify North Carolina as one of the, maybe down to just 2 critical races this fall that will determine where that goes forward.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back talking about democracy and more politics.
Get in the game with the college-branded Venmo debit card. Wreck your team with every tap and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash, a new rewards program from Venmo. No monthly fee, no minimum balance, just school pride and spending power. Get in the game and sign up for the Venmo debit card at venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
And we're back. You're listening to Under the Dome, the News and Observer podcast. I'm Dawn Vaughan with my colleague, Avi Bajpai. We were just talking about Kamala Harris's visit and what it means. And I'm pretty sure we're probably going to see her again. I don't know if we'll see President Biden coming to campaign for Sherry Beasley. Avi, why do you think maybe he won't come? I heard there was a poll.
Yeah, there was a poll actually yesterday. As a matter of fact, while we were doing our reporting, High Point University came out with a brand new poll that showed that even though, President Biden has been experiencing some success, there might be some relief in the White House nationally. His approval rating hit a personal low nationally of 38% last month. It's rebounded back up to 44%, but according to this High Point University poll that came out yesterday, his approval rating in North Carolina is down to 32%, which is not a good sign politically 2 months out from the midterms, and might be some indication as to why Sherry Beasley, who is running in basically the most important race or one of the most important races for North Carolina Democrats this fall. Even though this fundraiser yesterday was sort of built to help candidates like her, she wasn't around. She did not attend that fundraiser yesterday.
I don't think she's been at a lot of the big visits, and I don't know if reporters usually ask her campaign. I don't know if we've gotten the real clear as like completely transparent answer as to why she's not there. So we'll see about with any future visits. So before we get to Headliner of the Week, there's something else we wanted to talk about. There's this new event series that's traveling the state about elections and democracy and has different people involved. Avi, you went to one of these this past week. What exactly is it? Who's part of it? What's the point? What are they doing?
Yeah, this is a series of town hall discussions it's basically being led by a bipartisan group of people. I think the best way to describe them is ex-public officials. Many of them are ex-judges or ex-attorneys, ex-prosecutors, but basically people who have spent some time working in the sort of legal system or in the election administration system. And it's run by two people in particular who are sort of leading the charge here. There's Bob Orr, who is a former Associate Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. And then there is Jennifer Roberts, who is a former mayor of Charlotte. And they've basically convened this series of town hall discussions. They kicked things off with the first one in Wake Forest. And then there was one in Smithfield the other night, which I went to. And it's, just based off of my observations, it's been a pretty interesting effort, a pretty interesting endeavor for them. The event that I went to in Smithfield had a turnout of about 24 people. And It's basically a chance for anyone who's concerned or just has any questions or wants to basically know how elections work. When they go to vote, how does the process work? How are their ballots counted? How are voters registered and verified? How are their identities verified? There's sort of been rising distrust or rising mistrust in a lot of our institutions over the last couple of years. There's been we've had two high-profile elections in 2016 and 2020 where there have been questions about legitimacy of certain races or certain elections and questions raised about the process. There was a lot of scrutiny in 2020 when it took a couple of days for vote counting to actually finish and for a winner to be declared. And so I think this series, which is basically it's a tour across the state. It's starting here in the Triangle, but it's going to go across all over the state. I think it's basically a chance for a bipartisan group of officials or ex-officials, people from both parties, to come together and answer questions that people have. The atmosphere in Smithfield was pretty casual, I think, in a good way. It's nothing too formal. We were sitting in the historic courtroom in the Johnson County Courthouse, and people just sort of come together. There's a box of cookies at the front door. You can grab a cookie and sit down and talk elections for 90 minutes and have your questions answered. So I think it's a good opportunity for anyone to avail if they're inclined. They should go ahead.
What's the name of the event again, so listeners know?
This is the Trusted Elections Tour. You can head to their website, nctrustedelections.com, look up when the next event is, see if there's one close to you. And as far as I know, registration is free. So pretty easy to register and head on down.
All right. Well, now it's time for Headliner of the Week. My headliner of this past week is Coach K. My editor took out the line I had where I said, in case you've been living on another planet, before explaining who Coach K is. So I'm not going to tell you all because I'm sure you know who Coach K is. And I spelled Krzyzewski right on the first try. My very first day when I worked at the Herald Sun several years ago was that you get this wrong, it's over. It's the unforgivable sin of misspelling Coach K's last name. So anyway, the reason I'm talking about Coach K is that Governor Roy Cooper, who we all know is a UNC fan, insufferable one with his light blue gingham shirt with Speaker Moore for their bipartisan cheering of Carolina. So why was he having Coach K at the mansion? Why would Coach K go? Well, it was the Order of the Longleaf Pine, which is that pretty cool award. It's a high honor that the governor can bestow, and it's really just a ceremonial way of thanking someone for their very long service to the state. It's the kind of thing that you give someone when they retire. And Coach K retired as obviously not from public view, but from being coach of the Duke men's basketball team. And I also will admit that I'm a Duke fan. I'm a Virginia Tech Hokie, go Hokies, but my local allegiance, really after working in Durham for so long, when I did, even though I live in Raleigh, I became a Duke fan. I'm, of course, also an NCCU fan, go Eagles. So anyway, my headliner is Coach K for his induction into the Order of the Longleaf Pine. And a little side note, sort of a sub-headliner, are the first dogs of Sadie, the very, very friendly Dalmatian that I love seeing on the mansion grounds whenever I'm there walking by, and got to see maybe more than just in passing Violet, the Cooper's rescue dog that they got maybe a year or so ago. And Violet just trotted down the mansion steps like she owned the place, but didn't stop at the microphone to take questions or anything. So that was a fun thing. So I guess my headliner is both Coach K and the first dogs. So Avi, who or what is your headliner this week?
Yeah, I would just say to listeners, that was a really great story that you did, Dawn. Very fun and just really fun to read. So definitely, yeah, go ahead and check that out. For my headliner, I'm going to give a shout out to our colleague at the Charlotte Observer, Will Wright, who covers politics. And he did a very, very interesting story about what is sort of billed as one of the top priorities for Republicans, for state lawmakers, Republicans in the General Assembly. If they come back for the next session and they come back with a legislative supermajority, if they have the power to basically circumvent Governor Cooper's veto, then one of their top priorities is this immigration bill, this bill that they've tried to pass in 2019. They also tried to pass it this summer, and it failed both times. That would basically require North Carolina sheriffs to cooperate with ICE, detainers, and basically work with federal immigration authorities. That was a very interesting story because we had Senator Tom Tillis, we had Representative Ted Budd, who is of course running as the Republican nominee to replace Senator Richard Burr, who's retiring. And we had a bunch of state lawmakers, including House Speaker Tim Moore, all of these Republicans gathering in Lexington this week for a roundtable discussion with some sheriffs about the importance of this bill. So I thought that was a very interesting look at how, there's some other issues, ever since the Roe decision came down, abortion has kind of dominated the headlines as it should. It's an important issue that, we're going to see a lot of attention on in the legislature, but I think this is a close second or something that will be equally important to look for going forward.
All right. Well, that's about all the time we have. I'm Dawn Vaughan with Avi Bajpai. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.